Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. A few videos ago I was talking about kind of my struggle to find the value in mythology, specifically Greek mythology, because I had just listened to Stephen Fry's Mythos, so a retelling of the Greek myths, and I was just like, I understand the historical value of these myths. I understand that from them we can know so much about the Greek world and about the Greek mindset and Greek religion. I also understand their literary value, the fact that the Greek myths are foundational for Western literature. Yeah, they're not confined to the Greek period. They pop up again and again and again and again. They influence many of the great Western writers, and they're just an integral part of the Western canon. I understand all that, but I was wondering about kind of the spiritual and moral value of the Greek myths, because in a lot of them, there's a lot of adultery, revenge, murder, all kinds of unseemly things in the Greek myths, and it can be hard to look past that sometimes and really find seeds of truth and goodness in them. And so that's something I've been thinking about and struggling with a lot. But I'm happy to say that I have come to some conclusions and kind of developed a better understanding of how and why to read Greek mythology. Especially as a Christian, how can I approach these pagan myths and glean something from them? Glean something more than just an intellectual understanding. And so I have my mythology notebook here, which if you watched another one of my previous videos, you saw that I was making all these notebooks for different genres of literature, and I'm starting to compile definitions of these genres with the goal of also compiling lists of the great texts that fall into these categories so that I can work my way through them and read them over the course of my life. And I have a page here in my mythology notebook called Why Should Christians Read Pagan Myths? And a lot of these ideas I'm completely just stealing from the Literary Life podcast from Angelina Stanford and Cindy Rollins and Thomas Banks, because I've been loving their podcast recently and listening to a lot of the episodes there. A lot of this is also from Tolkien and Lewis and different readings that I've done on both of these authors, from both of these authors, on mythology and the value of myths. So I just want to go over this briefly before we get into the book, the main focus of this video, the book that I want to talk about. Lewis and Tolkien had this idea that all myths in the ancient world point to the true myth. So the question is not between myth and truth. We moderns have an understanding that if something's a myth, it's false, it's untrue. That's not the question here. The question is not between myth and truth, but between true myth and false myth. And Lewis and Tolkien viewed Christianity, viewed Christ, the incarnation of Christ in the world, as the true myth that all these other myths, including the pagan Greek myths, were pointing to. The idea there is that the story of Christ and the person of Christ, we all have an innate longing for that story. It's the story of reality. It's written on our hearts. We cannot help but tell stories that are grasping for redemption, ultimately for a figure like Christ to come and set things right, to make things right between God and man. So then, if all these old stories are actually just telling the story of Christ in some small way, not fully of course, they're shadows of the story, they're glimmers of the story, that means the seeds of truth are in these stories. Seeds of truth are there. And for me, that is enough. Identifying these seeds might not always be so easy. It might take a lot of careful reading and careful thinking and criticism, and that's okay. And on the Literary Life podcast, they use the example of the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice, which is one of my favorite myths and was a favorite of the early Christians who wrote commentaries actually on all these ancient pagan myths. Because there are so many seeds of truth in the myth of Orpheus. You have a figure who is half god and half man. He's a prince, a son of a king. He's sort of this Christ figure. He's the bridegroom. He falls in love with this woman, Eurydice. She gets bitten on the heel by a serpent. Like, doesn't that just ring of Genesis, right? The bride of Christ figure getting struck by the serpent and descending into Hades, descending into the realm of the dead. So Eurydice goes there when she dies, and Orpheus descends into Hades to rescue his bride, which is literally what Christ does by dying on the cross. By dying on the cross and rising from the dead, Christ saves his bride, the church, his people, the people of God, from sin and from death. That's pretty much what Orpheus does, except he almost leads Eurydice out of the realm of the dead, and then he begins to doubt. He doubts the promise of Hades. Hades had promised that she would be able to escape the realm of the dead if she followed him without him turning back and looking at her. And all of a sudden Orpheus doubts that she's actually following him, and he turns around and he sees her, and then she disappears and she is lost forever to the realm of the dead again, because he couldn't quite believe, he almost saved her, but he didn't quite get there. And of course, where Orpheus failed, Christ did not. And so that's just one example, and I get so excited about this kind of stuff. Plato actually said that the reason Orpheus failed in this quest is because he was not willing to die for his bride. He was willing to go into the underworld and lead her out back to the land of the living, but he was not willing to die himself and descend into the realm of the dead with her, whereas Christ was. That's exactly what he did. So pagan myths are all of our heritage, but are also part of the Christian heritage. There are stories because they are part of this bigger story. And so with that in mind, I want to talk today about Til We Have Faces, a myth retold by C.S. Lewis, which is a retelling of the popular, well-known myth of Cupid and Psyche. In this book, C.S. Lewis is dealing with these questions. What is myth? What is truth? What is real? This book kind of places false myth and true myth and kind of rational materialism, the rejection of mysticism, against each other in a very, very interesting way. And before I really get into this book, I want to just say that it is famously complex and rather difficult to interpret. There is a lot going on here. This was my first reading of the book, and so I'm sure there is much about it that I've completely missed. But I actually didn't find it difficult to read. I found it quite easy to follow the story and to pick up on some of these themes, and so it wasn't too much of a struggle, and I thoroughly enjoyed reading the book. But I just want to say that this video is probably best for those who have read the book before and have some idea of, at least the myth of Cupid and Psyche, but ideally you've also read Til We Have Faces by Lewis. If not, that's okay. My goal is that this video will entice you to pick up the book and work through it and think through it yourself, because it's really one of those books where it's not enough just to listen to a summary. You actually do need to read it yourself. I'm going to do my best to dive into some of the questions and themes here, but this is not going to be the perfect, exhaustive summary and exploration of the book, and so I highly recommend that you go further than watching this video and read the book if you haven't already. In terms of just a brief overview, as I said, this is a retelling of the classic Greek myth Cupid and Psyche. Lewis actually does include the original myth, or a version of it, at the back of the book, so I'm going to read that briefly here. The story of Cupid and Psyche first occurs in one of the few surviving Latin novels, The Metamorphoses, sometimes called The Golden Ass, of Lucius Apuleius Platonicus, who was born about 125 AD. The relevant parts are as follows. A king and queen had 3 daughters, of whom the youngest was so beautiful that men worshipped her as a goddess and neglected the worship of Venus for her sake. One result was that Psyche, as the youngest was called, had no suitors. Men reverenced her supposed deity too much to aspire to her hand. When her father consulted the oracle of Apollo about her marriage, he received the answer, "Hope for no human son-in-law. You must expose Psyche on a mountain to be the prey of a dragon." This he obediently did. But Venus, or Aphrodite, jealous of Psyche's beauty, had already devised a different punishment for her. She had ordered her son Cupid to afflict the girl with an irresistible passion for the basest of men. Cupid set off to do so, but on seeing Psyche, fell in love with her himself. As soon as she was left on the mountain, he therefore had her carried off by the west wind, Zephyrus, to a secret place where he had prepared a stately palace. Here he visited her by night and enjoyed her love, but he forbade her to see his face. Presently she begged that she might receive a visit from her 2 sisters. The god reluctantly consented and wafted them to her palace. Here they were royally feasted and expressed great delight at all the splendors they saw, but inwardly they were devoured with envy, for their husbands were not gods and their houses not so fine as hers. They therefore plotted to destroy her happiness. At their next visit they persuaded her that her mysterious husband was really a monstrous serpent. "You must take into your bedroom tonight," they said, "a lamp covered with a cloak and a sharp knife. When he sleeps, uncover the lamp, see the horror that is lying in your bed, and stab it to death." All this the gullible Psyche promised to do. When she uncovered the lamp and saw the sleeping god, she gazed on him with insatiable love, till a drop of hot oil from her lamp fell on his shoulder and woke him. Starting up, he spread his shining wings, rebuked her, and vanished from her sight. The 2 sisters did not long enjoy their malice, for Cupid took such measures as led both to their death. Psyche, meanwhile, wandered away, wretched and desolate, and attempted to drown herself in the first river she came to, but the god Pan frustrated her attempt and warned her never to repeat it. After many miseries, she fell into the hands of her bitterest enemy, Venus, who seized her for a slave, beat her, and set her what were meant to be impossible tasks. The first, that of sorting out seeds into separate heaps, she did by the help of some friendly ants. Next, she had to get a hank of golden wool from some man-killing sheep. A reed by a riverbank whispered to her that this could be achieved by plucking the wool off the bushes. After that, she had to fetch a cupful of the water of the Styx, which could be reached only by climbing certain impracticable mountains. But an eagle met her, took the cup from her hand, and returned with it full of the water. Finally, she was sent down to the lower world to bring back to Venus, in a box, the beauty of Persephone, the queen of the dead. A mysterious voice told her how she could reach Persephone and yet return to our world. On the way, she would be asked for help by various people who seemed to deserve her pity, but she must refuse them all. And when Persephone gave her the box, full of beauty, she must on no account open the lid to look inside. Psyche obeyed all this, and returned to the upper world with the box, but then at last curiosity overcame her, and she looked into it. She immediately lost consciousness. Cupid now came to her again, but this time he forgave her. He interceded with Jupiter, who agreed to permit his marriage and make Psyche a goddess. Venus was reconciled, and they all lived happily ever after. Spoiler alert, Lewis's version of the story is going to be quite different, and it's actually told from the perspective of one of Psyche's evil sisters, Orual, and this book is essentially Orual's polemic against the gods. It's her complaint against the gods for the injustice that they have put her through and the suffering they have forced her to endure over the course of her life. She says, I no longer fear the anger of the gods. She doesn't care what the gods are going to do to her. When she writes this book, when she writes this complaint, she must get her complaint out because she's at the end of her life. She's at wit's end. She's just done with everything. And so she says, I say therefore that there is no creature so noxious to man as the gods. Let them answer my charge if they can. It may well be that instead of answering, they'll strike me mad or leprous or turn me into beast, bird, or tree. But will not all the world then know, and the gods will know it knows, that this is because they have no answer. In the land of Gloam, that's where the book is set, there rules a king, and he's very wicked and horrible, the worst king ever. And then he has 3 daughters, Orual, Retold, and later Istra or Psyche. All her life, Orual, who is the oldest and really ugly sister, and they have no mother, by the way, she struggles to believe in the gods due to the influence of the Greek rationalist, the fox, who is both the king's slave and kind of the daughter's grandfather figure, their teacher, their tutor. She's influenced by this Greek rationalist who says, the gods, they don't exist. It's all a bunch of superstition. None of it's real. And yet, she's not fully convinced of that. She fears the gods and she loathes them. She hates the gods as they are supposed to be, or as they are believed to be, by the priests and the people of her kingdom, for various reasons that we'll get into. And yet, eventually, Psyche shows her that the gods are actually far better than what they think they are. So I think there are kind of 3 competing religions or systems of belief or thought in this book. We have the religion of the land, the false myth, in other words, which is the worship of Ungit or Aphrodite. In the land of Gloam, they call her Ungit. They are not in Greece. They vaguely know some things about the Greeks. They are a barbaric civilization compared to the Greeks. And so they worship Ungit and her son, the king of the mountain, who is supposed to be Cupid. Essentially, Ungit is this faceless stone. The priesthood of Ungit is grotesque. Holiness is the smell of blood. So there's a lot of sacrifice that happens. These gods demand sacrifices or else they inflict consequences on the kingdom, famine, war, disaster, plague, etc. So these gods are difficult to please and appease. They have a reign of terror. Lewis says, all are born into the house of Ungit, and all must get free from her. And so this is kind of the religion of superstition. This is what the people believe the gods are. I'm not saying that Ungit and the king of the mountain aren't real, but they turn out not to be who the people believe they are. And so this religion of the land, this superstition, this religion of blood and grotesqueness, that's not actually who the gods are or how they want to be worshipped. That's what the people have created to be their religion and to be the way that they worship the gods. Then we have the religion of the fox, which is this rational materialism. Again, the fox being that Greek slave who teaches the princesses. He believes that the gods aren't real, they're just nice stories, or not so nice stories, you know. He believes the world is governed by nature, the divine nature. There's no real mystery. There are the laws of science and the material world and reason. That's what should guide our lives, because beyond that, nothing really exists. So what you see is what you get. Religion, belief in the gods, that's all superstition and barbarism. And you know what, he is right about that, in the sense that Unget and her worship, that is barbarism and superstition. That's grotesque religion. And you see that time and time again in the book. And so these are kind of polar opposite sides of the debate. The religion of the land, the false myth, the superstition, and the religion of the fox, the rational materialism. Orual is torn between these her whole life. She falls somewhere in the middle because she doesn't want to believe in the gods and worship the gods according to the religion of the land, and yet she can't help thinking that something about that is true. Okay, and then the third category is the religion of Psyche, which Lewis meant to be the true myth. So when Psyche is sacrificed on the mountain to Unget, she's rescued by a great and beautiful god who is not named, and he won't show her his face. He takes her to be his wife and live in a glorious palace, and he visits her every night, but he can't show her his face. And with him, Psyche experiences true bliss. But Orual, when she comes looking for Psyche to see if she's still alive and to bury her bones, she finds Psyche alive and well, more beautiful and more happy than ever. And Psyche tells her about what she's been experiencing with this god, but Orual cannot see the palace. And the more she hears about this lover god, the more she hates him. And so she convinces herself that Psyche is delusional. She refuses to believe that this god might have taken Psyche to be his wife and that he might be good. And she's also insanely jealous of him for capturing Psyche's love. However, for a split moment, after Orual literally threatens to kill herself if Psyche doesn't attempt to reveal the god for who he is by, with the lamp, going to him at night and looking at his face, even though he's forbidden her to look at his face, she convinces Psyche to disobey his order because she's so convinced that Psyche's just going to find some sort of monster or grotesque beast and not this delectable lover of hers. Psyche, to save Orual's life, because she truly loves her sister, she does this. Sometime at this point, when Psyche is going in, I think it's at this point anyways, Orual actually gets a glimpse of the palace. She sees that it is real, and she understands that it is real, that the god is who he says he is, that this palace exists even though she can't see it. But then it's gone, and it's too late, because now Psyche has disobeyed the god and been cast out, for now, for her disobedience. Psyche is the most beautiful character in this book. She's pure in heart, she's a believer in goodness, she sees rightly. She's the one person who always believed that the god of the mountain and even Unget were more than they appear in this people's religion. She's not held back by fear, jealousy, anger, or bitterness. She says, I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid there won't be a god on the other side of this. She says it at some point. She wants so much to believe that the gods are good and better than people could ever have imagined, and then she finds out for herself that they are, but she can't make anyone else see it, especially Orual, who is completely blinded by hatred to the truth. Psyche has this longing for something that her world can't satisfy, and that is something that Lewis repeatedly said over his career, right? There's that famous quote about having a desire that this world can't satisfy, meaning that you must be made for another world. That really comes through here with Psyche. And it's really striking when she says, when she's talking to Orual, trying to convince her that her palace is real, her god husband is real, and that she's not being deceived by some beast or whatever. And she says, if this isn't real, how am I alive? Because she's been surviving then in the wilderness. She's been in her palace, but if the palace isn't real, she would have had to be surviving in the wilderness where there's dangerous wild animals and no food and whatever for months. And here she is, absolutely gorgeous, looking beautiful, super healthy, not a scrape on her. Obviously, someone's been taking care of her. She's been somewhere. So she herself is the evidence of this god and this palace that Orual and nobody else can see. And so the big question of this book is really, why can some see and some cannot? Why can Psyche see, but Orual can't? And why do the rest of the people not understand the gods for who they actually are and what they actually are, but they've created this Unget and this king of the mountain and these kind of grotesque, disgusting gods who demand blood and sacrifice? That's who they're worshipping. Those aren't the true gods. That's not who the gods really are. So why can some see and why cannot? And honestly, that is one of the most important questions in life. In terms of Orual, I think it's because she cannot love rightly that she is held back from truly seeing. Her loves are not properly ordered, and that's a very C.S. Lewis idea. Again, the idea of ordered loves. Orual has not had a lot of love in her life. Psyche, her little sister, is the one creature whom she has loved and dedicated herself to and taken care of. She's been this mother figure to Psyche, and she deeply loves Psyche Psyche for most of her life, but then this love gets taken too far and it becomes possessive and it becomes hatred. Her love for Psyche demands that she be needed. So it's a selfish love. It's, I want Psyche to need me and to rely on me, and I want to be this strong motherly figure for her because that gives me purpose. And so the idea there is that earthly love will always be corrupted if it's not the divine agape, self-sacrificial love. The hop from passionate love to hatred is very short. And Orual is so upset when she realizes that Psyche is happy in her palace with her god and doesn't need her anymore, doesn't seem to really miss her. She prefers to be in that palace with her god husband than back in Glome with Orual, and this hurts Orual so much. She says that Psyche doesn't love her enough and she never loved her. In reaction, she tells Psyche that she hates her. Her love for Psyche turns to hatred when she realizes that Psyche loves someone else. Psyche loves this god, her husband. And subsequently, that's when Orual, threatens to kill herself if Psyche doesn't trick the god lover, etc., etc. And she kind of pressures Psyche into betraying her lover just to prove to Orual that she loves Orual and she doesn't want Orual to die. It's just the height of selfishness. And again, as I said, Orual does get a glimpse of the palace and she hears the god roar. She sees the sky explode when the god realizes that Psyche's looked on his face. She knows he's real, but she is unwilling to believe in him because she hates him. And it's because of this jealousy, this jealous love. The faceless lover has stolen Psyche's affections, she thinks, from Orual, and therefore Orual hates him because he has stolen the one object that gave her life purpose and meaning. And even though Psyche says, I'll ask him to allow you to come into the palace and to see him, I'll ask for you to be a part of this. She's not trying to keep it for herself. Psyche isn't. She's trying to bring Orual into it because she does love Orual, but Orual doesn't want that. She does not want to see this god enter into his world. She wants to bring Psyche back into her own world where she can control her. So even though the door to something so much better is open to Orual, she refuses to walk through it because she wants things to be on her own terms. She wants things to go back to the way they were, and she does not want Psyche to have bliss and love and companionship apart from her. She doesn't want to share Psyche with this god. One of the themes, almost like a proverb in the Land of Glome that comes up time and time again in the book, is loving is devouring. When Psyche is sacrificed to this god of the mountain, people are expecting him to devour her, and that's also him taking her to be his bride in a sense. That doesn't happen because the god of the mountain is not who they think he is. He does take her to be his bride, but he does not devour her, he loves her. But loving is devouring. Orual's possessive love devours Psyche. It ruins her relationship with Psyche, and you see that come into play with other characters in the book as well. And of course, Psyche has things that Orual can never have. Psyche has beauty and the love and admiration of men. She has a lover, a husband. She has truth. She has joy and bliss. These are all things that Orual herself never gets to experience. And so all the more reason for Orual to hate Psyche and to envy her and to want to steal those things from her. Okay, a word on the title of the book, Til We Have Faces. This book is all about seeing and not seeing. It's about some faces being visible and many not being visible. The idea here is we need to be seen as we really are. We need to be able to see things as they really are. Who doesn't have a face in this book? Ungit, right? This grotesque god that the people are worshipping. She is a stone. The god who is Psyche's lover in the dark, he doesn't have a face. He hides his face from her. And Orual herself, who is hideously ugly, and that comes up throughout the book. You know that she's really ugly, and eventually she hides her face behind a veil. She's veiling herself from the gods. She's not wanting to be seen for what she really is, right? She doesn't want her hatred and loathing for the gods to be revealed. And the gods are also hiding their face from her, in a sense, where she doesn't see them for who they are. She doesn't really comprehend them. Why is Psyche able to bridge that gap? Why is she able to see, again, because she sees everyone for who they really are. She sees Orual for who she is. She sees the god for who he is. Even though she can't see his face, she believes in him and in his goodness. She sees through the falsity of Ungit. She loves Orual despite her ugliness. And she's willing to die to experience the truth. She's willing to die to be with the gods, the real gods. She's able to die to herself and to her old life for something better. I want to read a quote from Psyche that I think is just utterly beautiful. She's trying to explain to Orual why she's actually excited to be brought up to the mountain and sacrificed to the god of the mountain. She says, I have always, at least ever since I can remember, had a kind of longing for death, and not just death, but the god of the mountain himself. She says, Orual, I am going, you see, to the mountain. You remember how we used to look and long, and all the stories of my gold and amber house up there against the sky where we thought we should never really go. The greatest king of all was going to build it for me. If only you could believe it, sister. No, listen. Do not let grief shut up your ears and harden your heart. Orual says, is it my heart that is hardened? Psyche says, never to me, nor mine to you at all, but listen, are these things so evil as they seemed? The gods will have mortal blood, but they say whose. If they had chosen any other in the land, that would have been only terror and cruel misery, but they chose me, and I am the one who has been made ready for it ever since I was a little child in your arms. The sweetest thing in all my life has been the longing to reach the mountain, to find the place where all the beauty came from, my country, the place where I ought to have been born. Do you think it all meant nothing, all the longing for home? For indeed it now feels not like going, but like going back. All my life the god of the mountain has been wooing me. Oh, look up once at least before the end and wish me joy. I am going to my lover. Do you not see now? But Orual refuses to see. She says, I only see that you have never loved me. Somehow, all her life, good and beautiful Psyche has had a sense that the truth is out there and that it's beautiful and it's good and that the gods are beautiful and good, even though nobody else can see that. Why does Orual eventually veil her face? It's to hide her physical ugliness. It's to become a mystery so people can admire her when she becomes queen for her works and wonder if maybe she's possibly beautiful under her veil. It's a symbol of the fact that she's hiding from the truth, from the gods and from her past, the truth about herself and the truth about the gods. It's a symbol of her blindness because she is more blind than ever once she abandons Psyche for good and becomes queen of Gloam. And the idea here is also that human beings can only handle veiled truth. We can only handle a glimpse of glory. That's why the god doesn't show his face to Psyche, because if she saw him, she wouldn't be able to handle it. The weight of glory is too great to bear. And so Orual must come to know herself. She must come to realize what she really is. She's always deceived herself. She's deceived herself into thinking that she truly loves Psyche when really she doesn't. She loves what Psyche gives her. She needs to come to see herself in her ugliness and to realize what is wrong with herself and to realize that she's the one that's standing in the way of her becoming like Psyche, right? Psyche, who knows and lives among the gods. Okay, I feel like I am really rambling here and I'm skipping so many important details and scenes in this book, and it pains me. You must just read the book. This video is not enough. Anyways, Orual eventually encounters the true god. She gets the chance towards the end of her life to stand before the gods and make her complaint. She is uncovered. They say, uncover her. Her veil is taken off. And then she gives her complaint, and it's not at all what she meant to say. You know, she's written this whole book that she thought was her complaint against the gods, but she ends up saying something different, speaking from the heart and really revealing what her problem is. Why she hates the gods, why she loathes them. And then there's silence in the room, and she finds out that her complaint was the answer. She gets no answer directly from the gods because her complaint was the answer. She finally sees it, and she sees what has been wrong with herself, and that is the answer that she needs, and she's shown mercy. Psyche says, did I not tell you that a day was coming when you and I would meet in my house and no cloud would be between us? The god comes to judge Orual, who has hated him, despised him, refused to believe in him her whole life, and he says to her, you also are Psyche. And she looks up, and she still does not see his face yet, but she experiences this deep joy that ugly, wicked, disbelieving Orual could be, in the eyes of this god, just like beautiful, good, truth-grasping Psyche. That is when she finally gains her sight, and she says, I know now, Lord, why you utter no answer. You are yourself the answer. C.S. Lewis in his own life always felt torn between reason and imagination. He loved myths, he loved imaginative stories, and yet he felt that he needed to be this really hyper-rational philosopher, and that's a tension that I think a lot of us struggle with in the world that we live in. But the point of this book is that you can't be one or the other, because neither of them are enough, neither of them are the truth, right? A superstitious, made-up, imaginative religion, Ungit and the priesthood, and rationalism of the fox, neither of those give Psyche or Orual the truth and the answers that they're looking for. Neither of those lead them to actually see the god face to face and know who he is. C.S. Lewis's point is that reality is in the in-between. Somewhere between reason and imagination is where the truth is, between reason and mystery. As a Christian, I resonate with that because I do believe that Christianity is a reasonable faith, that there are rational, logical, good, compelling reasons to believe in Christianity, and yet there is still such a mystery to it. The idea that God became man and lived among man and died to save man from their sins and take their just punishment on himself to redeem them simply so that they could be with him and they could have right relationship with him. There is something so irrational about that to human minds. We can't picture how that could be true, how anyone could really do that, and yet that's the great mystery of Christianity. And even in this myth, this God who was Psyche's bridegroom, she was the bride. He rescued her from the darkness of gloom and the false religions in gloom, and he loved her and he cherished her and took care of her. I don't know, I just think that idea that we cannot fully stand before God face to face. We cannot comprehend his glory. We cannot handle the light and the beauty of his face. And yet, one day we must stand before him face to face. Till we have faces, then our face must be true and revealed for what it is. We need to come to grips with who we really are, that we are so little and so evil and selfish and wicked in the face of this good and perfect God. And so we must stand face to face with him, seeing him for who he is, knowing who we ourselves are. And yet, in the end, that will not destroy us, because he will reach to us as this God reaches for Orual, saying, "You also are Psyche. I see you as Psyche. I see you as someone good and beautiful. I want to accept you and take you in and forgive you and love you." So do the gods set us up as mark for their arrows? Are our lives nothing but misery from the hands of the gods, being tossed about by the gods? Or are they actually guiding us to them? And even though the way might be difficult sometimes, it is ultimately good, because then and only then can we stand before them face to face and comprehend the truth. Alright, I'm wrapping up this video here. There's so much more that I could say about this book. I could go on and on. I highly recommend that you check out the Literary Life podcast and the episodes that they do on Till We Have Faces. They walk through it much slower than I did. They go chapter by chapter, and they have some excellent takes on it. Again, I am indebted to them for helping achieve my understanding of this book. Thank you so much for being here, for watching, for being here for the first time and watching all the way through, or for coming back to hear me ramble about books that I love. Please comment your thoughts if you've read this book, or if you're interested in reading it. Please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye.